Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1 p.m. and we are going to call today's meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee to order. First off, we'll start off with the land acknowledgement. The City of Kawartha Lakes respectfully acknowledges that we are situated on the Mississauga lands and the traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaty. We are grateful for the opportunity to work here, and we thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions of Métis and other Indigenous people in shaping and strengthening this community. At this point, could I have a motion to adopt today's agenda? Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Member Willick?
Plan 2024-032. I have permission of my client to declare that since their application came forward, they have become a client of my office. So.
Okay, thank you. We will deal with that at the appropriate time. All right, so moving right into public meeting reports. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation on these applications. All recommendations that come out of this afternoon will be forwarded to the next regular council meeting on June 23rd. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make submissions on applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicants, interested parties, and staff. Everyone speaking today is requested to state their name for the public record, and in the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your comments to no more than 5 minutes. When the appropriate time comes after the planner makes their presentation, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to speak to any of the public meeting items on the agenda. At that point, please either unmute yourself and turn on your video or come to the podium and press the speak button to activate the microphone. So at this point, we will start with item 3.1, Plan 2024-036, an application to amend the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45 at 5 Craigo Street, Kinmount. Go ahead.
Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lindsay Noren, and I'm an urban planner from Dillon Consulting Limited. The City of Kawartha Lakes has retained Dillon Services for outsourced planning services work, and part of that scope includes processing and reviewing development applications. So I, alongside my colleague and fellow planner, Michael Hanifi, are here today as the planners on a file for one of the applications that was originally assigned to Dillon at the onset of our work here. I would like to note that the notice for this application was originally given to each landowner, agencies, and departments in accordance with matters of the Planning Act, and this is the first circulation and appearance at PAC for this application. The subject property is located at 5 Craigo Street, with the correct legal address being 5 Craigo Street, Plan 105, part of Lot 1, west of Monk Road, south of Craigo Street, in the geographic township of Somerville, now the City of Kawartha Lakes. The property is currently designated as Hamlet Settlement in the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and zoned as community facility in the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45 as amended. We would also like to thank the applicant and the landowner for being here today as well. Next slide. The site comprises about 742 square meters and is currently serviced by municipal water and storm sewers and on a private waste disposal system. The property is currently developed with a former church and Masonic lodge with a ground floor area of approximately 143 square meters. The surrounding uses include residential, commercial, as well as community facility uses. The owner has applied to facilitate the conversion of the existing building to a residential dwelling unit. This proposal will change the zoning from community facility to rural residential type 2 exception to permit the conversion and recognize the existing lot deficiencies in the zoning bylaw, which includes minimum lot area, frontage, front yard, and flankage yard. Next slide. Uses surrounding the site include multiple properties with similar built form zoned as rural residential type 2 as well. I reiterate that no built form changes or alterations to the existing structure is proposed. It is simply just to convert the existing building to support a residential use. Various documents and reports were submitted by the applicant and circulated to agencies and departments who evaluated these in the context of conformity and consistency with relevant plans, bylaws, and policies. This also included a cultural heritage evaluation report, which recognized the property's place in history and noted that there would be no adverse impacts from the residential conversion. Next slide, please. On the original site plan submitted, the driveway was shown as zoning deficient in length only, but no amendments were provided for this. Planning staff have been working with the applicant, who has since provided a revised site plan of which the driveway is now zoning compliant. While planning is satisfied with the intent of the zoning bylaw amendment, and we see no concerns as it relates to the zoning bylaw, development engineering advised further review and discussion through the planning and legal process as required regarding the financial and legal responsibilities of who should initiate, lead, and finance the need for easements for the existing water service to adjacent properties along Crego. Solving these now will resolve the city's concerns and provide further clarity for the landowner and any future landowners that we believe will benefit from this. This route would be in the city, committees, and council's best interest, in our opinion. With this in mind, staff respectfully recommends that the application be referred back until these issues have since been resolved. Planning staff is always more than happy to continue working with the applicant and city staff to ensure that these issues with the easement are addressed and the application can continue. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Noreen. Committee, any questions at this time? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you very much. Just one quick question. The outstanding issue is the report back for municipal infrastructure currently?
Yes, the outstanding issue is to be sent back to staff to review the entrance of the driveway and to make sure that easements are in place for the infrastructure that is currently running underneath the property to other addresses on Crego.
Good. Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that's the only issue stopping this from going through is the easement issue. Could that not be done as an aside to move this along? Is a question, I guess, for, I don't know who.
Although,
Through the chair, Michael, I don't know if you have some thoughts on this as we previously discussed.
Absolutely, yeah, through you, Chair. In response to that, there are two concerns right now. The first being the driveway that's noted on the property was not identified as being a driveway at the time of the application. It had always been there, but it had not been identified by the city as a driveway initially. And so in order to facilitate the driveway being in its current location, it's recommended that the location be reviewed to ensure that it is safe to include as a driveway entrance where it is located. We've understood that there are some potential issues with infrastructure underneath that aspect of it. But from a zoning perspective, there are no concerns with the actual shape and dimensions of the driveway. In terms of the easement issue, there's easements running along Crego Street that have not been identified on the survey plan. And as a result of that, there's ongoing discussions with Development Engineering Services and the applicant to discuss who essentially is going to be involved in the surveying of that land and whose responsibility it is. So there's a few matters related to legal that are currently ongoing that the municipality may want to deal with at this stage before moving forward. And those are the two concerns that are outstanding, which are tied in essence to the approval of the zoning.
Okay, Mayor Elmsley.
Thank you. On that subject, would Ms. Sisson or Director Barry like to give the city's perspective on what we think should be done?
Mr. Chair, through you, thanks for the question. Mayor, I won't speak to the infrastructure, but I might just say a comment on the potential to use a tool like a holding mechanism, for example. If the committee's wish was to attach a holding symbol with a condition to be cleared, in our opinion, although that is an option, we don't want to unnecessarily encumber the process and create another administrative option for council to deal with at sort of a second or third meeting. So we think it would be more sort of efficient, economical, and for the owners as well to continue working with staff. I think there are sort of really now scoped down to just a couple of pieces. We don't expect there would be a lengthy delay returning to PAC. Ms. Sisson, any additional comments on the infrastructure?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, this isn't a development engineering issue at this time. Now it's become a legal issue, and so really needs to be addressed. An easement is something that would come through the legal mechanism. So it's not really within our realm. Excuse me. And I also understood that it's Public Works that want to review the entrance permit as well. So we are down to a couple of items, and we did meet with the owners yesterday, and we understand the desire to keep moving with this process.
Thank you. I have one other question, if I may. On page 3 of 9 of the report, it refers to the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw. We just recently passed a new consolidated rural zoning bylaw. Will that take precedent over this, and is it different than the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw?
Mr. Chair, through you, thanks for the question. Until the rural zoning bylaw has gotten through its appeal period and is in force, the Somerville zoning bylaw will continue to take effect. The new zoning bylaw, when it comes into force, does have transition policies in it and will pick up on decisions that are made in the intervening, let's say, weeks and months, and last for a number of years, so that any decisions that are made will carry through in the new zoning bylaw.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, Talia, if we pass the resolution that's here, how long do you think it will be until this can be resolved? It's something that, you need an entrance permit, an easement, so it shouldn't take too long, I hope.
Mr. Chair, through you. No, we don't think it should take too long. I'm afraid I can't give you a specific PAC meeting date myself when it can return. However, with the chair's indulgence, I'll throw the question over to our consulting planners in the event that in their most recent discussions with staff, if there was some indication around ETA on comments back from our legal experts.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We followed up with legal, and we are working with them to resolve this issue with the applicant. Again, from a planning perspective, planning has no concerns with the zoning aspect of this. So as soon as we button up those final issues, we should be able to move forward fairly quickly.
Okay. Any further questions of staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, does the applicant, owner, or their agent wish to speak to the application?
I'm the applicant for this item, and I wish to speak to the PAC meeting if possible.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of committee. My name is Marnie Saunders, and I'm a planner with DM Wills in Peterborough. I'm acting as the applicant on behalf of the landowners of 5 Craigo Street, which is the subject property for item 3.1 on today's agenda, being the zoning bylaw amendment for 5 Craigo Street. We've reviewed the staff report from staff, as well as the comments contained within that report. I just want to take an opportunity to provide some additional background on the application and the existing conditions on the property. Did submit an updated site plan earlier today. I'm not sure if the committee has that available to share on the screen or not.
Hi, Marnie. You should be able to see it on your screen. We have it in council chambers too.
Okay, great. So this is the updated site plan we prepared recently as of this morning based on some meetings we had with staff earlier this week. We've worked very closely with staff on the application and addressing, and hopefully have addressed most of their comments as kind of explained earlier in today's meeting. This plan shows the current location of the proposed driveway. As staff have covered, the proposed driveway does meet the minimum zoning bylaw minimum requirements. It is an existing location where has historically always been used to access the property. The subject property doesn't have any formal entrance permits on file. We do acknowledge that. And we did receive comments from Public Works staff requiring a review of the entrance. We have submitted recently a request for review through the City of Kawartha Lakes entrance permitting process. Again, that was requested by staff, and it is for review only, as the driveway is an existing driveway. It's been used, like I said, to historically access the property since the original use of the property, which was established in around 1920, being a former Baptist church and Masonic lodge. So we are working with staff, Public Works staff, to have that reviewed. But as I said, there is no formal permit required. It is an existing driveway. It's in the existing conditions are intended to be maintained. It's a grass lawn. The other major concern or comment that came from staff related to the driveway was the location of municipal infrastructure underneath the driveway. So again, on our updated site plan, we've shown the location of that municipal infrastructure and identified that the location of the driveway is not on top of the distribution line that requires the easement that was discussed. It is over top of the water connection to the building itself. However, there's no issue with that. We've also identified the proper sanitary system on the property, which is in fact a holding tank. When the current landowners purchased the property in 2021, they had intended to use the property for residential purposes. The property didn't have any services when they purchased it. There was no water and no sanitary. So since they've improved the conditions by connecting to the municipal water system, as well as installing that holding tank. The reason I point out the fact that it is a holding tank is because they don't require the same setback for driveways and buildings and things like that the traditional systems would require. So the parking is quite close to that holding tank, but there is no issues with that. In fact, that will be where the vehicles park to maintain that holding tank whenever it needs pumped or anything like that as well. And again, the conditions of that grass lawn area are intended to remain as is. That will provide the driveway access, but it'll also ensure that if there's any future maintenance for the water connection or the holding tank, that that's available, and that if there is any need for access from the city to their distribution line, that there's no impeded access to that either. I think the other biggest issue that's been brought up at today's meeting is the requirement for easements. So it was suggested through the review process that there is municipal infrastructure on the subject property, and staff had suggested that easements be registered to provide access for the city to that service. As it stands currently, there is no legal access for the city to access that main or the subject property should there be a requirement for any sort of maintenance or repair. As mentioned, that line does service several other properties along Craigo Street. It was installed approximately 20 years ago. As I said, the driveway has always been located there, adjacent to it. It's been used prior to the installation of that distribution line and has been used since the distribution line's been installed. So I think the main concerns from development engineering have been addressed by showing where that line is, demonstrating that there is no parking over top of it. In terms of public works, like I said, we are in the process of having that review completed. It's a formal permit is not required, but we are in the process. The landowners have submitted that information for review. I think that finally the last issue is the easement, which I think it really is a separate matter aside from the zoning bylaw amendment. As I said, that service was installed about 20 years ago. It requires an easement. The landowners do acknowledge that, and they are willing to work with legal staff. But we do feel that that's very much a legal matter that needs to be addressed, irregardless of whether or not this zoning bylaw amendment application was being processed. That summarizes my presentation or response to comments. If there is any other questions from the committee, I would be happy to do so. And I believe the landowner would also like an opportunity to present to the committee as well.
Thanks for that, Ms. Saunders. Committee, any questions of Ms. Saunders at this time? None? Okay.
Thank you.
Christina, go ahead.
Well, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I did just want to clarify, as per our conversation yesterday, we had encouraged that the actual curb stop, which is shown with the letter CS on that particular plan. I understand that the consultant has suggested there isn't an issue with the service under the driveway. What we look to have is the curb stop itself outside of the driveway area. So I think that's a minor amendment to the design for the driveway, and don't see that as a huge ordeal. The second commentary that we'd like to make, we've just seen the site plan now as well, is that it has been recommended that the actual location of the existing municipal infrastructure be field verified. And that's something coming back from both Public Works and from the engineering corporate assets perspective. So prior to the actual easement being established, we just want to make sure that you're protected properly on the property for where that line actually is. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application?
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Christine Brickman, applicant owner, and Mike LeBlanc. And I just want to kind of personalize ourselves so that you can see a bit of a journey that we have gone on since we purchased this property. So just to introduce yourself, our family's been in the Crystal Lake area since 1961, and we were avid cottagers and also very avid volunteers in the community. So we made Kinmount pretty much, it was our town. That's where we went, the Kinmount Fair and the Austin Park. And we did purchase the property in February of 2021, but given some legal issues, it didn't actually close until 2021. The vision that we had when we bought the lodge was as a legacy to our father. Our father passed in August of 2020 in the height of COVID, and we thought as a way to give back to the village of Kinmount, because our father actually was a reeve for Galway Cavendish at the time. Not at the time, but had been previous to that. And because he had such an affiliation with Kinmount, we thought, well, when we saw the lodge come up for sale, that it was a good opportunity perhaps to give back to the community. And given that this location was ideal, it's right beside the rail trail, which is very busy. It's also beside the Austin Park and the sawmill. It seemed like a natural for our family. We originally were going to have it rezoned as residential commercial, but as we dug into the process, it became really impractical given the excessive and onerous and costly rezoning to go to that combo, even though we kind of had this vision of it being like a boutique and maybe a cafe in that area, but we since decided that residential was really the most expedient approach. Just wanted to get you a little bit of a visual of what the lodge did look like when we purchased it. Prior to it being a lodge, it was a church from the 1880s until 1921. In 2021, we purchased it from the Masons, and you can see that that was the original content inside the lodge, which was kind of cool. Unfortunately, they took all of those pieces back to the headquarters of the Masons. And I did want to point out that the church did survive the 1942 fire that devastated about 95% of the town. When we purchased it, there were no city water connections. On the right there, that's what it looked like as of yesterday. We have an in-house. We have no running water. We don't have a kitchen. And as you can see, we don't have a washroom. There is no sewage system. The zoning was community facility, and there's no surveys on file. Since then, which has been 3.5 years, we did the pre-consultation report that was submitted and finalized in December of 2021. We had a survey that was completed. The sewage system, which is a holding tank, was installed. The excavation and water connection to the main was done. We've had tremendous, to us, consultant fees that we've put out. We've also, as of last night, because we didn't realize it was required because it was a pre-existing driveway for 100 and some odd years, we didn't realize we needed an entrance permit, so we did submit that last night. So you can see that the total cost of $60,000 plus the purchase cost, we're already at $170,000. I still don't have a toilet or a sink inside that building. It's uninhabitable. 3.5 years, this amount of money, we still cannot use the property. I wanted to just do a little snippet here to make, make the point around the city of Kawartha Lakes and what the objectives and vision are for the city. I was on the Economic Development Committee for Trent Lakes for 8 years, so I'm very familiar with the vision for development and to bring in people to want to live, grow, stay, build a family in a community. And that's really all our vision is. We want the opportunity to have a residential dwelling in Kinmount and, perhaps have the opportunity to have a young family at some point in time be able to settle in Kinmount. I know you're all aware, but I had to point this out that there has been staff shortages since we purchased, and I know that there's a number of reasons for that with COVID and staff changes. However, we lost a lot of time with phone calls and emails not being returned. We also had a little bit of a hardship when it became known from the city, the Public Works, that the blueprints or drawings for the water infrastructure in Kinmount were unavailable. So that caused us a lot of extra delays and costs because we had to hire a contractor along with staff and a back truck in order to actually locate the main. There was some information that led us to believe that it could be in the middle of Monk Road, the highway. Fortunately, when they did bring the back truck and the contractors in, it was determined that the main was actually on our side, not on our property, but on our side of the sidewalk on the property. So the easement, discussion that has come up, that was a bit of a surprise to us too, because the distribution line, that water that supplies water to our neighbors, has been in place. We know it's actually significantly longer than 20 years. Marnie mentioned it at least 20, but we know that the city water has been 70 years in Kinmount. It was a dirt road when they brought that water in. We've talked to all the neighbors, and we know that easement's been there. So it's, basically been uninterrupted, and there hasn't been legal easements, but we're really unsure why that would be imposed upon us, the owners, given that easement and the water structure is owned by the city. So our request is to have the opportunity to move forward without additional delays. We would really appreciate if there's some way that you could give some form of approval for us to continue, given the amount of delays. The pictures on the left there are what it looked like as of yesterday. We're ready. We're ready to move forward, and we're also very willing and ready to work with staff, or I guess it's legal if that's what we need to do in order to put together any legal documents for those easements. So on that, Mike and I thank you for listening. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Brickman. Any questions? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you very much, and a little road ahead yet. I was just wondering, when you bought the property, did you have a chance to do any due diligence on the property, or what might be underground, or what might be going on with the property? Or did you buy it through a real estate agent, or just buy it privately?
Well, both. I bought it through a real estate agent. We bought it as is. We relied on some of the elders from the Masonic Lodge members to tell us some of the history. We bought it in the winter, so there was snow on top. It wasn't until, honestly, we knew that there was a distribution line because you can see the yellow, and some of the neighbors talked to us about it, but it never occurred to us that there could be a legal issue with it. Let's put it that way. In fact, we originally thought that the property line, because that's what everybody told us, that the property line was see in the lower picture, there's a yellow spigot there. To the right, there's a big yellow thing, and that's at the drain. We were told that is where the property line was. It wasn't until we had the survey done that we realized we actually own 1.5 meters to 2 meters to the left, to the south of that drain. So that was a big surprise when that survey came in. So it makes it very clear that distribution line is fully on our property.
Okay, any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, committee, what was your recommendation to council? Mayor Elmsley?
As printed.
Motion from Mayor Elmsley as printed, seconded by Member O'Reilly. Any discussion? Councillor Warren?
Just as I stated before, if this could be expedited, that would be a good thing. And when's our next? Do we have a break in the summer? We just keep going. Okay, that's great. So, folks, it shouldn't be too long. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Okay. All right. At this time, that concludes this public meeting held under the Planning Act. And we now move into item 4, deputations, which we have none, correspondence, which we have none, regular and returned reports, Item 6.1, Plan 2024-032, an application to amend Bobcaygeon zoning bylaw 16-78 at Duke Street, Market Square. And Matt Alexander. So at this time, Member Willick, if you would go out into the hall and have a walk, we'll call you back in. Go ahead, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you very much. Let me just adjust my settings here. I'm going to just show it like this because otherwise you get distracted by all the previews and stuff like that. So as long as this is clear, I'll continue the presentation like this. So this is regarding, as mentioned, the application for vacant property on Duke Street in Bobcaygeon. It's an application to amend the Village of Bobcaygeon zoning bylaw 1678 to permit development of a 2-story, 22-unit affordable rental apartment building. And I should clarify that under the zoning bylaw, it is just considered an apartment building. It's not zoned as an affordable rental apartment building. The proposal is to permit, as mentioned, 2-story, 22-unit apartment building. The site is currently designated as urban in the Victoria County official plan, which is still currently in effect pending resolution of appeals to the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan as it relates to this area. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. It is zoned restricted industrial, but it is vacant. And that is under the Village of Bobcaygeon zoning bylaw 1687. The application was deemed complete on October 25th, 2023. A statutory public meeting was held at this Planning Advisory Committee on November 29th, 2023. The Planning Advisory Committee passed a motion to refer the application back to staff due to some outstanding technical reviews from commenting agencies that we were still awaiting at the time. The applicant made a second submission of the zoning bylaw amendment application on March 27th, 2024, and it was circulated to the commenting agencies once again. The applicant has addressed all of the required comments, and it's our opinion that it is appropriate to recommend approval of the zoning bylaw amendment application. Under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, the official plan is still under appeal as it relates to this area. However, the designation for this area states that the Victoria County official plan will continue to apply until such time as a detailed secondary plan is in force. And so those are the policies that we look to determine appropriateness. And I'll show the overhead view as well. You can see that it is a vacant property at this time. And this is the site plan that is proposed. So the subject site is designated urban in the Victoria County official plan. This permits a range of residential uses, including apartments. Apartments are permitted up to a maximum density of 60 dwelling units per net hectare, with a limit to the number of floors not to exceed three floors, or a maximum height of 11 meters. This is considered medium density, and the official plan states that medium density residential uses shall only be permitted on full municipal services and shall be located on a major road or a local road connecting directly to a major road. The proposal meets all of these criteria. Full municipal services are available. The development is accessed by Duke Street, which is classified as an east-west urban arterial road in the City of Kawartha Lakes Transportation Master Plan. And it meets the medium density residential limits. Under section 5.7.2 of the official plan, intensification is encouraged throughout the built-up area. And in my opinion, the scale and massing of the proposed apartment building is compatible with the neighboring residential uses. Under the Village of Bobcaygeon Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 1678, it is, as I mentioned, zoned restricted industrial. And the proposal is to rezone that as urban residential type 4 with a site-specific exception. And this would permit the proposed use as well as recognize some site-specific property standards. The R4 zone as a by default or as its standard provisions permit apartment dwellings, and the site-specific exceptions include a reduced front yard and side yard setback, increased density, and a reduction in reduced parking rate. It's our opinion that the zoning bylaw amendment is appropriate given the details of the application as well as the official plan policies, and it maintains the goals and objectives of the zoning bylaw. Based on a peer review of the traffic impact brief and parking justification study that was submitted in support of the application, the reduced parking count is appropriate and can be supported. And staff also support the reduced setbacks. The comprehensive urban design analysis, which was submitted in March of 2024, was submitted with the application, demonstrates the landscaping that will be incorporated at the periphery of the site to provide screening and enhance the site. This is to provide a little bit of a buffer between not only the other property on the west, which is currently in operation industrial property, but also the residential uses to the east. And related to that, we're recommending the inclusion of a provision in the zoning bylaw amendment to acknowledge a reduced 3-meter landscape buffer on the west interior side yard, with the intention that an additional buffer may be implemented on the adjoining property or the adjacent property, the abutting property. But this will be addressed through a future site plan application. It isn't affected by the zoning bylaw. So at the time of the public meeting in November of 2023, comments were still outstanding from a number of key agencies and departments, including the Engineering Department, Kawartha Conservation Authority, and the Transportation Peer Review Consultant. Since then, they've completed their reviews, and we, as I mentioned, received a revised proposal. Engineering has no concerns regarding the zoning bylaw amendment. Kawartha Conservation has requested that a karst assessment be completed during the site plan application stage, but this does not have an impact on the zoning bylaw amendment. And we also acknowledge that the comments received from the city's housing affordability coordinator encourage the applicant to work with the city staff to implement the affordability component of the proposed development. So as I mentioned, the zoning itself doesn't require it to be affordable housing, but the applicant is an affordable housing provider, and the intention is to provide affordable housing units in this development. And so based on the revised proposal and the comments that we've received, the proposal supports the policies of the PPS and the growth plan. The proposed development is permitted, in our opinion, under the Victoria County official plan. Staff support the site-specific zoning standards being requested as part of the proposed development. And if approved, this would help the city achieve its target of constructing 6,500 housing units by 2031, as stated in the housing pledge adopted by Council in November of 2023. And so on that basis, we are recommending approval of the zoning bylaw amendment for application D06-2023-019 as found in Appendix D to the staff report. And I believe I don't have any other slides, so that is my submission.
Thank you for that, Mr. Alexander. Any questions? Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. Just a couple questions. Was this piece of land, was this city land? Because right next door is the Verlem Works Yard that hasn't been a works yard for quite some time for many reasons. That's my first question.
I'm not aware of whether, through you, Chair, I'm not aware of whether this was city-owned land at any point.
I'm just wondering if, because next door, whether or not any process, not to hold things up because we need housing, but were there any soil samples taken from this piece of land?
Through you, Chair, I believe there was a review of previous uses of the property, and this was not identified as an issue. But I don't have that in front of me right now.
Okay, we'll leave that for now. When people came to have comments, their issue was parking. So have there been any amendments to the parking issue that was brought up? Or is it the same?
Through you, Chair. Through you, the applicant submitted a parking study, which has been peer reviewed, and no concerns related to parking usage were identified. The parking rate, let me see if I have that in front of me. The parking rate that is standard in the R4 zone is 2 spaces per dwelling unit, which would require 44 parking spaces based on the number of units proposed. Their recommendation or their application is to provide 1 parking space per unit. And given the nature of the units, that seems appropriate. And regardless if any parking issues arise, they can be dealt with through typical parking enforcement.
And just one more question. At the back by the park, so that, just to be clear, there is going to be a buffer, because that was one of the issues people had also, because and the school is quite close also.
Through you, Chair, you can see on the site, the aerial photo, that there's a baseball diamond behind the site, as well as other park facilities. And on the site plan, you can see that let me see if I can zoom in for you. Oops.
I just didn't.
So you can see that there is a water retention basin there and a rear yard setback with the accessible parking space. I believe there was discussion of including fencing along the rear of the property. Yeah. That is something that can be required through the site plan process. And otherwise, this is a residential use backing onto a park, which is generally considered compatible and appropriate.
Yes. So is there any way through site plan that there would be enough space to actually have a buffer along the fence? That was a concern.
Through you, Chair, there's no identified, there's no policy requirement for a buffer between a residential use and a park space.
Councillor Richardson.
I think all my questions were just answered, Chair, and I do want to recognize that you had said that the public comments have been, even peer reviewed, so you've gotten all the additional information, and a lot of the background information will be added once we go to the next site plan application to amend, I think, if we need to move this project forward, because it is a good news story. But we also got to take into consideration some concerns that were raised.
Christina?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, the planning justification report did show that an environmental site assessment was done phase 1, just to help clarify. Thank you.
Okay, committee, any further questions? What are your wishes? Councillor Richardson,
I'll move as printed.
seconded. Councillor Warren, any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? That carries. All right. Does somebody want to grab Jason? Let him know he can come back. All right, item 6.2, Plan 2024-038, an application to amend the Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75 at Hamilton Street, lots 51 to 57 and 64 to 66, Plan 137 Plan 137, 12867923 Canada Inc. Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this is regarding an application on a vacant piece of property on Hamilton Street in the town of Lindsay. This is an application to amend the town of Lindsay zoning bylaw to permit the development of a self-storage facility. And I'll show you the aerial photo here. So as you can see, it is a vacant property currently. The proposal is to establish a new self-storage facility on the property. The property is designated as urban settlement area, urban settlement boundary area under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. And under the Lindsay secondary plan, the property is designated as general employment. The property is zoned general employment under the town of Lindsay zoning bylaw. The proposal includes, I'm going to pull up the site plan. The proposal includes one large building in the center with storage units that will be accessed from within the building, an interior corridor self-storage building, as well as a smaller building on the right side, on the east side, which would be located along the eastern lot line with units that have external access. They are also proposing a gatehouse at the main entrance and an administrative building near the rear of the property. Vehicular access to the site will be facilitated through a gateway located on Hamilton Street. They are providing 17 standard parking spaces and 1 accessible space on site with emergency vehicle routes proposed that encircles the main building. This application was deemed complete on December 7th, 2023, and was circulated for comments. A statutory public meeting was held on February 7th, 2024, and the Planning Advisory Committee passed a motion to refer the application back to staff due to outstanding technical reviews from commenting agencies. Under the Kawartha Lakes official plan, the subject lands, as mentioned, are designated urban settlement. The subject lands are also located within the Lindsay secondary plan area and are designated general employment. The proposed self-storage facility is in keeping with the permitted uses within the general employment designation, and it has been confirmed that it can be serviced by planned and existing infrastructure and utilities, and is therefore generally appropriate as a use in the within this designation. Under the Lindsay secondary plan, it, as mentioned, is also designated general employment. The applicant has submitted a concept plan that demonstrates the appropriate level of landscaping and buffering as prescribed by the secondary plan. The concept plan and traffic impact brief demonstrate that there will be adequate parking provided and service and loading areas as supported through the internal road network. Comments from Development Engineering Department included additional requirements for future site plan application related to road infrastructure, but these are not matters that need to be dealt with at the zoning bylaw amendment stage. Under the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75, the property is currently zoned general employment, and this does not currently include a storage facility as a permitted use. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject lands to general employment with a site-specific exception to add storage facility as a permitted use. However, the zoning bylaw does not currently have a definition for self-storage facility, but that the proposed use is in line with the existing definition for mini storage warehouse. So even though we refer to it as a self-storage facility, the applicant puts it forward as a self-storage facility, the zoning bylaw would call it a mini storage warehouse. And so that's the definition and the standards that we're using in our assessment. And this is covered in section 4.122 of the zoning bylaw. And a mini storage warehouse, it's defined as a building containing separate individual self-storage units divided from the floor to the ceiling by a wall with an independent entrance from the exterior of the building. And it goes on in the way that zoning bylaws do, but it is appropriate for this application. The proposed development meets the building envelope requirements under the zoning bylaw, and it provides the minimum landscaping and buffer requirements of 3 meters. It also exceeds the minimum requirement of 6.5 off-street parking spots for a warehouse of over 2,000 square meters. And so it meets those standards as well. The zoning bylaw amendment, in our opinion, is appropriate and aligns with the goals and objectives of the zoning bylaw. The Planning Advisory Committee meeting was held on February 7th, as mentioned. There were comments made at that meeting. 3 interested parties raised concerns about the proposed development related to fire separation, parking management, and traffic demand management, as well as best use considerations, increased light pollution, and impacts to adjacent residential properties, as well as impacts to wildlife. The application was circulated to all relevant parties, and we looked at these individual concerns. Additional details that would address anything related to fire separation and compliance with the fire code will be dealt with through the site plan application process as well as the building permit process. Staff note that the applicant has provided the minimum landscaping buffers on the perimeter of the site, and there are standards required to be met regarding light pollution, and so those will be dealt with through the site plan application as well. And so based on the comments contained in this report, the review of the application from relevant agencies, the applicant has demonstrated conformity with requirements for development within the urban settlements area of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, as well as the general employment policies within the Lindsay secondary plan and the zoning bylaw. There are no concerns related to site servicing and capacity or on-site sewage capacity, as well as sewage capacity. And there are some elements related to stormwater infrastructure and other factors that will be dealt with at the time of site plan approval. And so we respectfully recommend that the zoning bylaw amendment for this application be approved as recommended in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Any questions of Matt at this time? Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report. The buffer around the perimeter, what is that, trees or bushes, or what's the green area consist of?
Through you, Chair. I believe it is, let's see if we can spot it here. It is intended to be green, so it would be maybe just grassy. It might not be required to be something like a hedge, but as you can see from the aerial photograph, the adjacent uses are all industrial as well. So it's really just a matter of providing a little bit of extra separation between the property line and the buildings and the parking area.
There are some residential there, though. Is there not on that side?
On the other side of the street.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just grass, you're saying?
I believe it may just be grass.
Any further questions of Mr. Alexander? Okay, seeing none. Committee, what are your wishes? Member O'Reilly?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we receive the report, to report 2024-038, Town Lindsay zoning bylaw amendment for E/S Hamilton Street, 57R5111, Part 1, Plan 137, lots 51 to 57 and 64 to 66, and Part Robertson Close, former Town Lindsay update be received, and that the zoning bylaw amendment respecting application D06-2023-031 substantially in the form of attached Appendix D to report plan 2024-038 be approved and adopted by council, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents, agreements required by the approval of this application.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Richardson. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 6.3, Plan 2024-039, request to enter into development agreement, Iris Grove. Director Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have many slides. We will throw up a location map for you here, hopefully in a moment. It's behind me. You can see it. Joel, can I ask you to advance it just by one, please? It'll give us an idea of what the zoning is. So this is just an information report for the committee. No decisions are needed by this committee. It will move on to council through the PAC minutes. So as is customary, staff bring subdivision agreements, development agreements forward near the end of an application process for council endorsement. We believe this exemplifies good government, provides oversight, provides accountability through the development process. In this case, the subdivision was actually registered well over 20 years ago. It's known as Plans 626 and 627 in Bobcaygeon. Today, it's referenced as Riverside Heights by Iris Grove. We are in the vicinity of Hemlock Crescent and Cedar Tree Lane in the northeast area of Bobcaygeon. Now, some lots already contain single detached dwellings, while the majority do not. Those are the lots that are the subject of this development agreement, which is at Appendix C in the report. So although a subdivision agreement was registered in the past, council in 2006 deemed the lots in the plans to no longer be considered individual lots under the Planning Act. Council did that to ensure that no further development would take place in the subdivision until the matter of completing the services with appropriate guarantees was achieved. The matter with the previous developer has been adjudicated. The current owner has purchased the property with the intent of completing the servicing to current city standards. To move the development forward, my predecessor, Director Hawley, brought a site-specific rezoning to this committee in 2002. A holding provision was added to essentially require two things. One, that the owner enter into a development agreement with the city with the necessary securities, and also to apply to repeal the deeming bylaw that council had adopted in 2006. Council subsequently did repeal the deeming bylaw. That had the effect of reinstating the lots in Plans 626, 627. So now finalizing the development agreement in the report means we are a step away from bringing a report to council to remove the holding provision, as the conditions will have been met to do just that. We are of the opinion that this agreement contains all the necessary provisions to ensure the subdivision is developed in an appropriate manner. Final note, the developer is interested in entering into a model home agreement to get the first 2 homes built. That agreement is also in its final stages. That doesn't typically come to this committee. We're excited to get this development moving forward at long last. It does bring us closer by about 61 units to meeting our housing pledge targets. Mr. Chair, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Any questions of Director Barry? Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I know lots of history on this piece of land. It'd be great if this moves forward. Just a couple questions. So in this development, the first part of it doesn't have any curbs or gutters or sidewalks. Will this development meet a different standard for today with that kind of infrastructure?
Do you want to take that, Christina?
Sure, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So actually, through a capital program, we were able to put curbs, gutter, and sidewalk and improve the first phase of this particular development. Correct. So after it was assumed. So this is part of the onus on this current owner is to actually design and build this to today's standards for sidewalk and curb and gutter.
That's great. And there's also a trail behind there too that is part of the Trails Master Plan, I believe. So it would be really wonderful if there's some sort of connection to that. Just put that forward.
So further through you, Mr. Chair. So there is a wilderness park. The city has a wilderness park to the north of this particular development. And yes, there is a trail or a linkage, a walkway that's being reviewed with Parks and Recreation Division as well to ensure there's connectivity. And stormwater management has been introduced into this phase as well. Thank you.
Any further questions? Member O'Reilly?
I just want to thank Leah for including the development agreement because I never fell asleep until about page 76. I know you have to do it.
Okay, motion to receive and push forward to council. Councillor Warren, seconder, Member Willick. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? Carries. All right, that brings us down to the last motion of the afternoon. Member O'Reilly, motion to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Richardson. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.